Welcome back. In today's lecture, we're going to talk about JavaScript variables. We are going to see about variables, alert function, prompt function, and undefined data types or JavaScript types. Remember, that was from the first lecture, and I've told you that we need to do this later in the course. Okay, so open your VS Code, start new lecture, call it lecture-3.js. Make sure that you link it here. First, copy this one. Then we need to comment it out and make sure that you change this to 3. Okay, now our browser should be like this. Actually, we don't need that one. Now, variables are something that is very crucial for JavaScript. So it lets us to store values inside this variable. So consider them as a container. So we can add some data, we can store something there inside. So this way, we are giving the program a memory where we can store data. So variables hold any JavaScript data type. So they can hold any data type that we have just covered. Okay, so let's call it here variables. JavaScript variables. Oops, what's happening? Variables. And so first things first, we need to first specify that we are talking about the variables. And how are we going to do this? With var. And then there goes the name of the variable, and there we can specify the data. And now this another operator comes to place. Equals means we are assigning data here. All right. So how we can print out the variables? So console.log name. Let's call it here my name. And take note something that I did here, and I will just explain a little bit later. So go back to your browser, and here it is. Let's change it to more meaningful, Rick. Or you can put Andy, doesn't matter, your name. So, why variables are so useful? Okay, let's do it like this. And I'm going to show you. First, console.log 5 plus 9 and save it. So that will give us a result, 14. But if I want to access the same result, I need to copy the same line of code and execute it here. Right? So that will give me 2 14s. Well, this is not ideal. This is called code repetition. And there is a rule here in not just in JavaScript or any other programming languages. It's called dry. Do not repeat yourself. So it is a good idea to find a solution how we will not be able to repeat ourselves. So that's where variables comes into place. Now what we can do here, I'm just going to uncomment this one. For example, variable, let's put it here sum, and I will put 5 plus 9. Okay, now if I go back here, there is nothing there, right? But I can console.log just the sum, because the variable sum holds in the memory this data, 14, right? And if I create another variable called result, then I can still use the sum minus 5. For example, and that should give me 9. And I need to also console.log the result. So now you see the power of variables. We can reuse them because they're defined. They have a value, and now we can use them in the code. So if I want, I can just again use the result, and I say, let's make it here. This is the result from the variable. Semicolon there, plus make it breathing space. Make sure that you close this semicolon, and there you go. Now I have 9, again I have 9 here. So I can reuse it. That's called reusability. So that is pretty much it. And now let's talk about this part here, the notation, the way we're just giving the variable names. Now, is very important for us as a developers to create good variable names. A variable should accurately identify a variable name actually should accurately identify your variable, right? For example, if I say my name, then you should, as a developer from outside, to expect that, well, this will hold a string with my name, right? But what about this notation? It's gonna be called camel case notation. And how this notation works. Now, when we have a variable that is built from two words, like first name, then we're gonna use the camel case notation. And how this camel case notation works. Now, the camel case notation works, the first word is gonna stay with a small first letter. So it's not gonna be capital letter, but the second word will have a capital first letter, and it will be this first name. So throughout the course, I will use camel case notation, and you should also do the same thing. But in future, if you see somewhere or in some tutorials that they use some other notation, then that is okay, it's gonna work. Now, another rule how we can name our variables is that variable names cannot contain spaces. For example, variable my name, it's not gonna work. It's contain spaces. Another thing that the variable, you should know that they must start with a letter, underscore, so they can start with underscore, and you can continue with combination of letters and numbers, right? So you can even have a numbers. You can start with underscore, we can start with a letter, or you can start with a $sign. So let's do it like this. Var names can start with letter, underscore, or $sign, right? That is pretty much it. Now, another thing is you should know that variables are case sensitive. What that means, variable AB equals 8 and variable AB equals 8 are very different. Why? They're case sensitive. This is a capital B, this is a lower b. So this variable is completely different than this. Now in a memory we have two different variables, but they also have same value, but that's different. And yeah, so variable can contain letters, numbers, underscore, or $signs. They're case sensitive, and they can start with this 3. So you cannot start variable with 1, or you cannot start variable with a special symbol like this and that, or even the special symbol will not be able to be applied here. So if you save it like this, save it, you will have, you will have unexpected token. And that was the token that we just put. Nice. So let's continue working with our examples. So what I want to show you that for the first time, we will be able to use a function. So these functions are inbuilt. So we have access here. For example, the first is prompt. And if I do it like this, F stands for function. So it tells me that is a function. But every time I use function, I need to explicitly write these brackets. So console, actually I don't need to console the log now. And semicolon at the end. Now if I go back to a browser, then the browser will give me a pop-up where I can put a data or string here. And if I hit it OK, now they will be stored somewhere. Prompt. So again, I will not be able to access the data from the prompt. Why is that? Well, because I haven't stored it in variable. But what I can do is variable data, that, and then I haven't told you this, you can write here what is your name. And make sure that this I is capital, looks better. Now, look what will happen. Here is what is your name, but the browser is still there. So Rick. Now if I hit OK or return, then again I don't have access. No, I'm just joking. So the data variable is here, and yeah, I just have access to whatever we just entered through that prompt. So why I just access that data here and didn't write here console.log and that data? Well, if I do this and I will save it, then the entire live server will kick in. Every other line, it will go line by line, the compiler, and it will delete whatever I had previously hold it here, store it here in this data. That's why sometimes it's very useful, this browser console, so I can just use it. That's pretty much it. Now let's do something interesting. Another function that I want to show you is called alert, but let's spice this one up. So I'm just gonna prompt the user and I will say, how old are you? Are you? And I'm just gonna copy this, paste it. Now I'm just gonna ask about the year. And what I'm gonna say, what is the current year? Nice. And I'm gonna use alert function for the first time. Now this alert, I don't have to save it in a variable. I can, but I don't have to. And I will say I was born in, and semicolon here, space it, plus. Now I don't want to confuse this function. What I will do, I will get this in a brackets and I will just minus year with the age. So why just go with the year? Well, here it will be bigger than the age, obviously, and that will never produce a negative result. So this is a pure maths. So save it, go back to your browser. How old are you? 33. I don't know if you can see this. Let me just zoom it in if I can. No, I can't actually. So 33, hit OK. Then 2022, hit OK. Then I was born in this year. Nice. That is pretty much what the alert function can do. And they're out of the box there for us, so we can use it. So this is to alert the user that something is happening. For example, oops, you have failed to log in, or your password and confirmed password does not match. There are some scenarios that we can use all of this, and they're pretty much cool. When I started JavaScript, I was like using this prompt in my lectures and in my exercises, and I was pretty much excited because oops, I'm doing something with JavaScript. So that's pretty much it. And the last thing that I just want to talk is the undefined JavaScript JS type. Now this is from the first lecture, right? We just get Boolean true, but we didn't finish with the rest of them. Why? Well, because, for example, if I do here variable last name in semicolon and save it and try to console.log last name, so I'm accessing the last name, but I didn't initialize the value. So maybe I haven't told you, but variable my name or variable any name here is saying, okay, we are going to declare variable with this name, and we're going to assign value after that. So let me show you what will happen. Oh, now it's a good idea to go back here just to comment out this part, because it will ask you the prompts all over again and you don't want to see it. So it's going to say undefined. So why we are having undefined? And this is one of the data JavaScript types that we need to discuss. Now, undefined is meaning that we don't have any value in that variable. So undefined is that when we try to access something that doesn't hold data. So yes, there is a memory trace of our variable called last name, but there is no data. So it's only memory reference, doesn't hold any data. And that's why when we try to access it here, it gives us this undefined. Now, what I haven't shown you is that you can also later on, before you use this last name, you can say, you can actually initialize, you can give a data, and now it will work. It will say Sokolowski. Why? Because I'm consoling log after I declare and initialize with the data this variable. That is simple as it can be. Now, that is pretty much what I want to show you. And as a last thing, it's a good idea to mention this semicolon. So one thing that we haven't covered is the semicolon that I put at the end. So semicolon marks the end of the expression. Anything that is written as a value, like this, is considered as expression. Now, it will be working without colon nowadays, but semicolon, so it will be working even without semicolon, but it should also, very good point for you to just start using the semicolon, because that will end the expression. And yeah, it's a very useful, me as a teacher, to teach you that you should use it, and that will stay with you, and you can later on in your programming you will use semicolons. So that is pretty much it. Now, semicolon is anything that is written as a value is considered as expression, and semicolons puts always at the end of that expression. And that is pretty much for this lecture. We haven't done much, and you can comment this one now, but it is what it is. Make sure that you do the exercises. So I will see you in the next one.